I'm looking at a list of the abundance of all of the metals on the periodic table based on their abundance in the Earth's crust and the amount we are able to extract from the Earth. Keep in mind that some of these elements have been exhausted in most of the developed world, and we depend on developing countries with their conflicts in order to obtain them, especially platinum and palladium. I don't think I need to tell you how much conflict there is, especially with palladium these days, right? And where it comes from. But I find two metals that are surprisingly cheap. They can be obtained physically without too much difficulty and without too high of a premium. And they're quite rare, even more so than gold. So right now as we speak, the world produces 3,100 tons of gold every year. So let's look at all the metals that are rarer than gold. Thallium is very toxic. It's used in rat poison. I definitely would not recommend investing in that physically. Rhenium, very reactive. Germanium is a semiconductor, and it might be okay. It's not very metal-like. I definitely recommend platinum. I would recommend palladium, but it's in a bubble at the moment. Beryllium is toxic. Gallium is a liquid. Indium, that's a good one to buy. Right now, as I speak, it's going for below silver prices. And you might say, well, it's bulky. Well, that's the point, right? If indium goes where I think it's going to go, you don't need a whole lot of it to do very well, right? Just look at palladium. At one point, it was below silver. At one point, platinum was below silver as well, right? That doesn't mean it was bulky. That just means that with a little bit of change at the time, you could have had a good investment now, right? I expect similar things for some of these metals. You know, if you buy a kilogram of indium, it might set you back $500. But if you're right about it, that's like having a kilogram of palladium at some point, right? Tantalum, I think, is toxic. Selenium is toxic and smells really bad. Tellurium as well, obviously. Mercury is a liquid and obviously very toxic. I wouldn't recommend that. Yttrium, I don't think it's very metal-like. It's brittle. Bismuth, I might recommend. Now, bismuth right now is going for basically base metal prices. I just ordered some, actually. It's on the way. And I want to also make crystals out of it as a little bit of an art piece. So I have some bismuth that's coming in the mail, and I hope to demonstrate how to make crystals out of it. Again, you might say it's bulky, you know, $10,000 worth of bismuth. It's not even going to fit in my house, but that's exactly the point of it, right? At one point, you could have said the same thing about platinum, palladium. At one point, you could have said the same thing about rhodium, probably, right? There was a time when rhodium was basically trash, right? That doesn't mean it was bulky. Yes, at that time you couldn't buy $1 million worth of rhodium, but you could have bought some rhodium that is now worth $1 million, right? So I recommend anybody who, obviously I recommend your big four precious metals, but once you have that in place, once you have some mining stocks in place, once you got your rare earth mining stocks, REMX, I think it's prudent to have some indium and bismuth. I really do, because it won't take a lot for it to be worthwhile. Indium is used in technology. Right now you're probably looking at some in this. This is a Lenovo ThinkPad. There might not be too much bismuth in here. Bismuth is used, or it's very promising in semiconductors. It's very promising as a substitute for lead. Right now there's not a whole lot of talk about it, but I think bismuth will be very useful when we start to produce some of the heavy elements. A lot of the newly discovered chemical elements are produced by bombarding bismuth in a nuclear reactor. Of course, a lot of that is novel research at the moment, but even its next-door neighbor, polonium, is made by bombarding bismuth with neutrons, and we use polonium for rovers in space missions. Anyways, it doesn't take a lot. I wouldn't recommend putting tens of thousands of dollars into indium and bismuth, but a few kilogram bars definitely.